Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. This is Brandon from freestatecolorado.com with your weekly news roundup for January 15th, 2024. Every week, I take a look at some headlines, news stories, and articles from across our great state. You can find all of the links at freestatecolorado.com, where I'll post every weekly roundup, all the links for everything I talked about. Also, some original articles, working on some more of those, and interviews. Most recently, I have an interview with Dave Williams, the chairman of the Republican Party of Colorado, talking about all the shenanigans with getting Trump on and off the ballot, Lauren Boebert's switch, some opportunities and challenges that the Colorado GOP faces in 2024. Very interesting. If you know Dave, he doesn't hold back, so check that out if you're interested. And then also with Lori Gimmelstein, a group that I hope you've heard of called Colorado Parent Advocacy Network, CPAN, are really standing up for parents, trying to restore the parents' voice in education. So check it out. Really, really information-packed interview conversation that we had, talking about all the challenges that parents are facing in Colorado schools in terms of these schools basically trying to replace parents, trying to push parents out of the education process and just everything that that entails. So very interesting, very important information, especially if you have kids in government schools. But let's go ahead and get started this week on the news stories that are prominent this week here in Colorado, stuff that you should know about. From the Great Complete Colorado, page 2, husband of Representative Brittany Pedersen lands hefty Jefferson County consulting gig. Questions swirl around bid process. It's from January 15th, 2024 by Sherry Pife, a great writer. Despite voters in Jefferson County, Jeffco, overwhelmingly rejecting higher taxes twice in the last 3 years, the Democrat controlled county commission is back at it again. Only this time, they are willing to pay big money to a political consulting company co-owned by Ian Silveri, the activist husband of U.S. Representative Brittany Pedersen, whose congressional district includes Colorado. Now, if you know who Ian Silveri is, he is a guy who helped run this group called Progress Now Colorado, basically the center of the Blueprint model, a progressive activist network that would help elevate other single issue advocacy groups and really try and help them network so that they can defeat Republican candidates come election time. Brittany Pedersen, who's currently the first term Congresswoman from Congressional District 7, is formerly a state senator and state representative. She has been one of the biggest proponents of authoritarian legislation, including anti gun, uh, more taxes, anti family, anti property legislation for many, many years. So these are two of the worst offenders in terms of Colorado's progressive authoritarian wing. So big alarm bells anytime you see those names pop up, especially together here like this. Silveri is hoping he can help secure what looks to be another ballot initiative to de-taper county revenues and or raise taxes in some form. However, multiple problems with the process around how and to whom Jeffco awarded the hefty contract appear to signal inside connections influencing the decision. On November 2nd, 2023, Jeffco's acting purchasing operations manager, Vera Breckman Kennedy, signed a contract for $340,000 with the Bighorn Company, a Lakewood based campaign, public policy, and government relations consulting firm co led by Silveri, the former executive director of Progress Now Colorado, which touts itself as the state's, quote, largest and most effective multi-issue progressive organization, end quote. Silveri has been married to Representative Pedersen, a Democrat, since 2017. Of that $340,000, Silveri, who according to the Secretary of State's website, donated to the election campaigns of all three of the Jefferson County commissioners who ultimately approved his contract, brings in $180,000 as a consulting fee for his part in the services. Wow. So this guy is getting a massive payout. I mean, they're just paying off an insider, is what it seems to me. In this article, Sherry goes through the bidding process. It's pretty educational in terms of how county governments or governments in general put out bids for for companies to come in and get contracts. So there's some shenanigans with that if you'd like to read that part of it. One of the most important parts, though, is that Silveri and Pedersen are connected to pretty much every elected representative in Jefferson County on the Democratic side. Bighorn's website boasts that it has never lost a ballot initiative. However, success may not be the only thing that made Silveri attractive to Jefferson County. The connections and history between Silveri, Pedersen, and Jefferson County's leadership run deep. Savari and Pedersen worked together for years, pushing progressive policy. While Pedersen represented the Jefferson County Heavy House District 28 in the Colorado Legislature from 2013 to 2019, and then Colorado Senate District 22 from 2019 to 2023. Now, don't forget, Brittany Pedersen also worked for New Era Colorado before that. During Pedersen's time in the legislature, she served alongside two of Jefferson County's three commissioners, who ultimately selected Silvari for the contract. Andy Kerr, Boo, who represented Senate District 22 from 2013 to 2019, and Tracy Kraft Tharp, Boo, who represented House District 29 from 2013 to 2021. Pedersen's relationship with a third commissioner, Leslie Dahlkamper, dates to Dahlkamper's time on the Jefferson County School Board. In addition to donating to each other's political campaigns over the years, the two women worked closely on several bills impacting education, as well as the successful recall against three Jeffco school board members in 2015. Under the contract, Silvari says he will supply recommended strategy to inform decision makers, policy research, community outreach, polling, strategic communications, recommendations, report, and presentation. Longtime Jefferson County political activist Natalie Metton sees serious problems in awarding the contract. This contract also designates $110,000 of our public money for polling surveys, said Menton, who is concerned that they will include what are known as push polls. They are a political stunt. Push polls are commonly used for political campaigns and are often used by individuals or organizations in an attempt to manipulate or alter prospective voters' views under the guise of conducting an opinion poll. We're one of 13 counties in Colorado that aren't willing to give up our tax limitations, Minton said. We said no in 2019 and 2022 to a tax hike and eliminating Tabor government revenue caps. The problem is that we have three county commissioners who don't want to listen to our voices. Instead, they thumbed their noses at voters and started spending our public funds on a ballot issue campaign headed up by a political strategist. It's barely legal, but it's not acceptable. Menton also took issue with the contract providing what she sees as electioneering services. The Bighorn contract lays out recruiting the campaign team, setting up the fundraising, and providing the strategic communications, Menton said. That's called being a campaign manager, and you're using our taxes to pay this consultant to do it. It's an obscene use of taxpayer money. We have said no twice. Spending our public money on the Bighorn political operative is an abuse of power on the county commissioner's part and a misuse of taxpayers' funds. Well said from Natalie and Sherry Pife. A very important article. If you are in Jefferson County, you should be livid that your county commissioners are using your tax money, the money that they extort from you, that you work so hard to make, money that belongs to you and your family. They're taking that tax money, using it to hire political consultants in order to raise your taxes, to take even more of that money away. It's absolutely shameful what's going on in Jefferson County. The voters need to be up in arms over this. Well, let's go ahead and move on. Moving on to Douglas County here from Denver 7. Douglas County commissioners approved millions in tax relief checks as steep property tax bills come due. The average homeowner will receive a tax relief check of about $190, a county spokesman told Denver 7. This article is from January 9th, 2024. Douglas County commissioners on Tuesday approved nearly $38 million in tax relief for property owners as they voted on the county's 2024 budget. The commissioners reduced the county's mill levies, essentially the tax rates for different county functions, which will lead to refund checks mailed to property owners later this year. County officials said the budget process has been lengthy this year and attracted extra attention as Colorado has seen historic increases in property values. In Douglas County, one of the hardest hit counties on the Front Range, median home prices climbed 47%. Wow. So good to see Douglas County actually standing up for their people, giving them some much needed tax relief and trying to do what they can to provide lower property taxes for the homeowners there. So good on Douglas County. Let's hope other counties continue to do this and, keep going. This is a good start, but I'm sure it's not enough for a lot of people living on fixed incomes out there. Let's go ahead and move on. From thegazette.com, January 8th, 2024, another article here about Woodland Park approving property tax relief. So another good story here. Nice to see that Woodland Park is standing up for their residents as well. The amount of property tax relief that citizens will get from the city of Woodland Park was finally decided at the January 4th meeting of the Woodland Park City Council. Taxpayers will get a 1-year reduction of 3 mills. The relief has to come in the form of a tax credit rather than a temporary mill reduction due to the constraints of the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights amendment. The decision had been delayed almost 2 months because other property tax measures at the state level affected relief measures at the local level. So great news that Woodland Park is also standing up for their homeowners there. So it's a start, not a massive savings, but definitely significant. You deserve the tax money. You deserve to get it back. So let's move on here. Denverite.com. Mayor Mike Johnston asks for city agency spending cuts to fund Denver's migrant response. From Kyle Harris, January 9th, 2024. Mayor Mike Johnston has made it clear for weeks. For Denver to continue supporting migrants at current levels and without additional federal support in 2024, it would cost the city's 10% of its annual general fund budget. Wow. Wow. So there you go. Now, behind the scenes, he's asking agencies led by mayoral appointees to cut spending so those dollars can be reallocated to fund the city's migrant response. So there you go. They're cutting services, they're cutting what they're doing for the residents, for the citizens of Denver to help this migrant crisis. Currently, more than 4,700 people are in city-run shelters, according to Laura Swartz with the Department of Finance. In total, the city has spent more than $38 million in its response effort. So the homeless crisis, the migrant crisis in Denver is not going anywhere, unfortunately. It's getting to the point where Denver city government is going to have to cut its budget, cut its money it's spending on other services for the people who are already there, the people who are paying taxes, just to try and stem this flow, just to try and prevent the worst from happening, of course. So interesting to see this continue, and we'll see where it goes from here. From a very related article here, moving on from westward.com, January 12th, 2024. Denver reaches a new high with 5,000 migrants in shelters. Wow. So there we go. We talked about 4,700 there before, but now there's 5,000. As the temperature dropped on Thursday, January 11th, Denver police officers went from tent to tent in an encampment nestled in the underpass of West 48th Avenue in Globeville. About 50 migrants have been living there, and the officers wanted to make sure that its residents were all taking shelter indoors. As a result of the cold weather, Denver reached its largest migrant shelter population ever on the afternoon of January 12th, says John Ewing, spokesperson for the Department of Human Services, which handles the city's migrant response. Denver first declared a state of emergency regarding the flood of migrants from south of the border in December 2022. The number in city shelters had been steadily climbing since mid-November, when around 2,000 migrants were staying in the city. This week started with about 4,600 migrants in Denver's 10 shelters. The city now has 5,000 migrants in shelters spread across 10 facilities, including more than a half dozen motels and hotels converted into non-congregate shelters, and 2 locations being used as congregate shelters. So it's a rough situation out there. There are thousands and thousands of migrants staying in these shelters. It's costing taxpayers a lot of money. And what's the solution? When is it going to stop? That is the big question. Let's go ahead and move on, though. A few more stories to talk about this week. I thought this story deserved a little bit more attention. This is from from ChristianPost.com from January 10th, 2024. Colorado Church sues, excuse me, Colorado Church sues city for opposing its sheltering of the homeless. Wow. A church in Colorado has filed a lawsuit over the city government's reported refusal to approve a shelter for homeless people on the congregation's property. Church of the Rock, a non-denominational congregation known as the Rock Church, filed the complaint last week against the town of Castle Rock, according to a report from the Denver-based KMGH. Church of the Rock accused the town and zoning manager of attempting to prohibit the congregation from giving shelter to people experiencing temporary homelessness. According to the complaint, the church was allowing RVs to camp on the property as a temporary shelter, and as of November 2021, there were 2 campers on the property. From at least 2019 through November 2023, these campers have been used on an occasional basis to provide overnight shelter for certain temporary shelter challenged persons participating in the Rock's compassionate care programs, stated the complaint, as quoted by Denver 7 News. Castle Rock does not have the right to tell the Rock which vehicles can be parked in its private lot, how long they can be parked there, and whether someone can sit, stand, eat, or sleep in such vehicle. The church contends that it has a right to provide temporary shelter for the homeless via the Federal Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. In recent years, the church has expressed an interest in building short term housing on its property for the less fortunate, having previously filled an application to allow the project. So, very interesting to see that City of Castle Rock is not interested in allowing this church. I get that there, are obviously some concerns, right? You have a lot of homeless people staying on this church property, definitely not sustainable in the long term. However, as temporary shelter with everything that's going on right now, I think it looks really bad on the city of Castle Rock and the town of Castle Rock for not allowing this church to at least provide some temporary housing for some homeless people. I mean, it doesn't sound like they're going to fit a lot of people there anyway. So, interesting story, but definitely deserves attention. If you're in Castle Rock, please look into this. Let's go ahead and move on. From the lobby-co.com, Colorado's minimum wage hike leads to massive layoffs, January 14th. Of course, minimum wage laws always are touted by some people as being helpful to workers, but at the same time, people who understand business, people who understand how wages work, how prices work, understand that you're basically just outlawing low paying jobs, making sure that less people have the ability to work, that businesses and entrepreneurs have the harder time hiring people. Colorado's decision to raise its minimum wage from 12.32 to 14.77 per hour has ignited a fierce debate over the effects on businesses and workers alike. While proponents argue that the increase will stimulate the economy and alleviate poverty, critics contend that it will have detrimental consequences for small businesses, potentially resulting in job losses and operational changes. According to a recent report by the Colorado Restaurant Association, over 40% of the state's restaurants have already reduced staff or hours in response to the wage increase. Wow. Major fast food chains like McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's have also announced plans to automate their operations, replacing human workers with machines. Among the casualties of this wage hike is Blimpie, a sandwich shop with over 20 locations in Colorado. The chain has been forced to lay off more than 200 workers, approximately half of its workforce, by the end of the month. Blimpie CEO John Smith expressed his deep regret, but explained that the wage increase has rendered the chain unable to remain profitable and competitive. Smith stated in the press release, paying our workers $14.77 per hour while maintaining the quality and affordability of our food is simply not financially viable. We are left with no choice but to reduce labor costs, streamline our operations. It is with a heavy heart that we have to let go of our dedicated and hardworking employees. It is the only way for us to survive in this challenging market. So there you go. They're definitely not alone, I'm sure. It's not the job of the government. It's not their purview to tell businesses how much they can hire people for. And of course, these individuals working at these jobs, I mean, they made a conscious choice. They decided to work at these companies. It's not like nobody's forcing them to work at these low paying jobs just because you consider it low paying might be better than making $0 an hour, right? Let's go ahead and move on here. All right, from CPRnews.org, CPR.org. In State of the State, Governor Polis calls for a Colorado with lower taxes, denser housing, and more trains. This is from January 11th, 2024. So, of course, every year the governor does a State of the State address, really tries to lay out his agenda, what he would want to see from Colorado. Not too surprising that Jared Polis talks about lower taxes. He's been doing that for years. Denser housing, of course, is something that most Coloradans do not want to see. Most municipalities, most of people in the cities do not want to see them crammed with more and more people. Trains, hard to believe that the government can manage a successful train program. RTD's been lacking for sure in their ability to deliver on their promises. Let's go and make this a little bit bigger for you. Democratic Governor Jared Polis delivered his vision for Colorado on Thursday, highlighting housing development and more transit options as two of his top policy priorities to make Colorado an easier, more affordable place to live. The legislature met in a joint session in a crowded House chamber to hear the remarks, which also included some of the governor's usual pop culture references, including an impression of Yoda and a joke about trying out for the Rockies. However, overall, Polis's nearly hour-long speech didn't have a lighthearted tone. Inside the chamber, security was extra tight for the State of the State address, while outside the building, protesters shouted for a ceasefire in Gaza. At times, chants from the demonstration can be heard inside the House chamber. Well, there you go. So, Talking about the protests, of course, continues on, but one of the big things that they're pushing for is housing. In this year's speech, Polis continued his push to change how the state addresses growth. His signature package to change land use and zoning laws failed on the final day of the previous legislative session after a huge backlash from local governments. He made it clear it's an issue he's not giving up on, saying there's a real sense of homelessness and despair in Colorado around housing. So there you go. This year, Polis is asking the lawmakers to tackle the issue through a number of narrower bills, and he outlined specific policies he supports, including a measure to ban local occupancy restrictions in housing, which would allow more unrelated adults and families to live in rental homes. Polis also backs allowing homeowners to build auxiliary dwelling units, or ADUs, on their property, creating more housing supply that's inherently affordable and filling critical gaps in our community. There you go. Transportation. We have the planes, we have the automobiles, we just need the trains. So, of course, you can imagine what this would look like. High density housing around transit corridors, including trains. Don't know if that's going to work out too well here in Colorado, but that is definitely his vision. One important part here to note, though, is that Governor Polis said cutting the income tax rate is the most effective way to further our economic growth. And in that, he is right. Jared Polis does need to push his party, push the Democratic caucus to lower, if not totally eliminate, the state income tax. So there you go. So check that out if you're interested in what the governor has to say. But I think it's very interesting. Not that the governor has total control over his party, but it kind of gives you a glimpse into what's going to be pushed in the legislature this year as well. Let's go ahead and move on here. All right, so kind of a nearly a rebuttal to the governor's agenda here, not entirely the same, but from Michael Fields, an editorial on Gazette.com. The agenda Colorado needs in 2024, January 7th, 2024, excuse me. Building a better Colorado in 2024 requires placing the policy priorities on the needs of taxpayers, parents, and local communities, with the goal of reigniting the state's economy and keeping government in check. This is at the heart of Advance Colorado's legislative policy agenda on fiscal policy, crime, and education. As a new legislative session convenes, Coloradans know that daily life has become more expensive, the economy is sluggish, and our once world-class quality of life has taken a hit. Government leaders seem focused on finding new ways to capture more tax dollars, increasing our cost of living, allowing the rise in crime, and restricting or resisting common sense reforms for our schools. As we turn the page to a new year, it's time for an agenda that tackles these challenges head on. So, Michael Fields, of course, is one of our liberty leaders here in Colorado, pushing back against the state government and their authoritarian measures. So, check out his article here if you're interested in getting some ideas in terms of what can be done, what maybe needs to be done in order to restore Colorado to a little bit more freedom. Let's go ahead and move on, though. Westward.com, January 5th, 2024. Meet the 12-year-old behind Colorado's ban on plastic bags and styrofoam containers. Now, I'm sorry, all due respect to this young woman. However, for 7 years she's been fighting this. I mean, she was 5 years old. It's absolutely and utterly ridiculous to think that a child has any idea about what should be done in our society or should have any type of influence over our political system. Absolutely and utterly ridiculous that this Arvada eighth grader is also an international climate activist. Oh boy. She's the youngest child advisor to the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child's General Comment number 26. Anyways, totally ridiculous. I think this is extremely stupid. In 2019, she presented 3,500 signatures to state legislators, including Senator Lisa Cutter, who sponsored the 2021 bill that prohibits single-use plastic bags in retail stores and styrofoam containers in restaurants starting this year. So absolutely and utterly ridiculous that this 12-year-old, this person who has no idea what's even going on in this world, is even considered as a policy expert. And shame on the legislators for pushing a radical agenda that actually is detrimental to the lives of people of Colorado. And people in Colorado should be able to use plastic bags, styrofoam containers, whatever they want. It's not up to the government to tell us otherwise. So, really shameful behavior. Where we just have children running our entire government, it seems. Let's go ahead and move on. DenverGazette.com from January 14th, 2024. This article has been getting a lot of traction, or this news story, this piece of legislation, excuse me, Colorado legislation requires public schools to call students by preferred name. Wow. Colorado public schools would be required to use a student's preferred name under a proposal that would also label the refusal to do so discriminatory. This bill is among several measures that deal with identity and gender. Another bill aims to make it easier for individuals convicted of a felony to change their legal change to conform with their gender identity. I'm sure they meant to say legal name right there. Proponents argue that socially affirming transgender youth's identities increase their school performance, while critics said it's yet another attack on parents' rights. If passed, House Bill 24-1039 would require public and charter schools beginning in July next year to use the student's preferred name, regardless of whether it is their legal name, for school documents such as rosters, yearbooks, and identification cards. The bill does not specify the penalty for schools that refuse to comply with its provisions, but critics said it would open them up to legal liabilities. The legislation, sponsored by Representative Stephanie Vigil, an absolutely ridiculous, not to be taken serious representative, and Democratic Senators Faith Winter of Westminster and Janice Marshman of Loveland, all extreme authoritarians, also calls for the creation of a 9-member task force within the Department of Education to examine school policies and recommend guidelines to implement the measure's provisions. So there you go. I think it's absolutely ridiculous idea that schools would be relying on students to go off their name and be in some sort of trouble, some sort of potentially legal issue if they don't use the kids' preferred names, even though parents might not agree with that, right? So here we go. Critics said the proposal takes away parents' rights. Jarvis Caldwell, a former House GOP communications director and House District 20 candidate, said the proposal offers, quote, no carve out whatsoever for a parent to refuse the child pick whatever preferred name they want, end quote. So if a parent tells the school to not call the child by the name the student prefers, quote, the school will legally not be allowed to follow the parent's demand. Wow. Meanwhile, House Bill 24-1071 would include gender identity as a good cause reason that the courts may consider for a legal name change. So there you go. There you go. Uh, just another example of these authoritarian legislators coming in there and taking away parents' rights. You know, really should be up to the parents, what the teachers, what the administrators, what people in school call their students, call their children. Let's go ahead and move on here. A few more articles. Complete Colorado, page 2. Some original reporting from Barry Fagan, January 7th, 2024. School choice is the key to making peace in education wars. Definitely. So the previous article talking about parents not being happy with what this education system in Colorado is facing. Barry Fagan is 100% that if we want to stop these education wars, kind of restore the focus on education rather than ideology, then school choice is the best way to do it. To the article. You might think, as a free speech activist and an ACLU honoree, should be squealing with glee at the struggles of Take Back Our Schools, a Colorado Springs parents organization that wants certain books removed from school libraries in multiple Springs school districts. The standard liberal reply would be something like crying censorship, unconstitutionality, ridiculing prudish parents who don't know what literature is, and who knows what else. It'd be easy to go there, but I can't. I can't go there because there's a deeper problem. The property tax dollars of TBOS members go directly to the school districts where they live. Everyone in that district has two basic choices: shut up and pay, or move. Since the cost of moving is normally very high, they pay. But they don't necessarily shut up, and why should they? Why is it okay for their tax money to fund schools whose administration, staff, and school board majority don't share their values? Fighting a political battle may be their only realistic option to make their voices heard in their children's education. Now, this isn't anyone's fault. The problem is the system. If you want to have political battles over books, religion, race, math, or any controversial topic, you couldn't pick a better system to throw gasoline onto the fire. I know this because I'm a veteran of the K through 12 math wars. As a professor who teaches cryptography to college students, I'm passionate about mathematics. Many years ago, I worked with parents and spoke at local school board meetings to try to get fuzzy math out of the curriculum. Failing that, I tried to help parents who wanted mathematical rigor get that option for their children. I came out unbound, but definitely bloodied. My point is sending property tax money directly
directly to school districts is in theory supposed to make us all sing Kumbaya. In practice, we just sing before going into battle. Here are some Colorado examples from last year. So, of course, school choice is a great idea. It should be what activists, parents, and even teachers should be fighting for. I mean, better school choice, more options for children, maybe things that are better suited for the needs of the kids can definitely help them. So check that article out if you're interested. Let's go ahead and move on here. Last article of the week. Another pending piece of legislation that our state government is considering: proposal allowing Colorado counties to ban flavored tobacco and nicotine products introduced from January 12th, 2024. A bill introduced by the Senate will allow Colorado counties to regulate or prohibit the sale and distribution of flavored cigarettes, tobacco, and nicotine products. Senate Bill 24-2022 defines flavored nicotine and tobacco products as anything with a scent or flavor other than tobacco itself, including products that induce a cooling or numbing sensation. Kyle Brown from Louisville, of course, pushing this. Terrible, terrible. So the idea is they're trying to basically get rid of tobacco. It's absolutely wild here in Colorado, a state that's benefiting so much from legal cannabis, that they're just trying to destroy the tobacco industry. They're trying to take away the rights of adults to be able to enjoy what they want in life. And this should be resisted and pushed back upon. Tobacco is the biggest whipping post for this progressive left, and it's very shameful behavior. Let's move on. Last thing I want to talk about this week is from meetup.com. The Liberty on the Rocks Denver is back. Denver's premier Liberty Meetup is meeting this Wednesday, January 17th. Talk starts at 7 p.m. Doors open at 6 p.m. Open source is a service with David Young, Federated.computer. Check this out if you are interested. It is at the Great Independence Institute in Denver. It is a free event with free parking, even better. Checking it out, here's the description. We all know big tech runs the world, but open source is quickly gaining ground on them. The problem is that open source can often be difficult to properly utilize. That's why David Young and others decided to start Federated.computer, which offers open source as a service. 100% private email, productivity, and team collaboration software without server admin hassle or surveillance. So come join the best Liberty meetup around to hear all about why and how you can get away from big tech. So check this out. It's going to be a great event down in Denver at the Independence Institute on Wednesday, January 17th. Well, thank you very much for joining me this week. Appreciate your time. We'll see you again next week with some more news articles. This is Brandon from Free State, Colorado, signing